Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Good morning. It is Mother's Day. If you didn't know that already, make sure that you do your call or your text or whatever it is that you need to do. It is a day when we pause and remember some of what our mothers have done for us, and some of how they have influenced our lives. And so it's a day that we can look back a little bit and remember the heritage that they have given to us. It's for me. It's also a little bit of a sad day because it's the one day a year that Lisa gets to go to her favorite restaurant, and so it's the one day that I willingly go to McDonald's. But for us, it's a little more than that, because Mother's Day weekend is also our anniversary, and so I did that on purpose so that I only had to remember one day, only had to do one dinner, so I get an anniversary dinner for McDonald's. So I mean, that's pretty smart if you ask me. But as we look back at the years, I think it's 35 years tomorrow. I reflect on our lives. There's no question, that the influence that mothers have. Is there? I mean, there's no question. Not only as I think of Lisa and as a mother and as a wife, it is because of her influence that we are leaving behind a heritage of faith. And the one thing though that I have learned over the years, when considering what we leave behind, is that there is no heritage of faith that is left behind without the difficulty that comes along to strengthen it. There is no heritage of faith that is left behind without the challenges that we face along the way that deepen it. And there is no heritage that we leave behind without the circumstances that happen along the way that stretch it, that grow it. But when we consider the challenge that that the author of Hebrews has given us, especially last week, as we kind of tie all of these things together, you remember what he said at the end of chapter 10? He said, "The just shall live by faith." And he was quoting the prophet Habakkuk, and there's some amazing things that we can learn from that prophet. But we know, don't we, that sometimes walking by faith is easier said than done. I mean, it's very easy for us to say, oh, you should walk by faith, or oh, you should have faith, or, when somebody comes up to you and they've got a burden that they're carrying or a challenge that they're in the midst of. I mean, how easy it is just to say, oh, you just need to have faith in God. But it's quite another when you are in the midst of those difficulties, when you are in the midst of walking through those trials and tribulations. You see, when the prophet Habakkuk was told that the just shall walk by faith, he was told that in the midst of great difficulty. The world around him was falling apart. There was all kinds of challenges, and he had just finished crying out to God, asking him, what is going on? Why aren't you doing something? And, in the midst of that, I wonder if we haven't done that before. If we haven't done something, similar to what the prophet did. Have you ever cried out to God? Wondered what is happening around you? Why is it that those who don't seem to care, those who don't seem to be doing the things that are right, they seem to be thriving, and yet we struggle? Have you ever looked around and wondered, looked around and thought, I mean, how is it that I know and I am doing everything that I know to do, and yet I can't seem to get anywhere. I can't seem to get ahead. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one in here who's ever been there, but I remember many times, over the course of my life where I've just kind of put my head in my hands and just cried out to God and said, what's the point? I mean, why is this happening? I mean, or we could just ask, as we have asked a time or two over the last weeks and maybe a couple of months, have you ever found yourself like you were, it felt like you were standing on the edge of a cliff, and it felt like there was nowhere else to go but down? You see, if you have ever found yourself there, if you maybe find yourself there even this morning, then the author of Hebrews, the author of this message that we have been walking through these last weeks, has some things to say that will help pull you back from the edge of that cliff. More than that, I would say that if you want to live a life with the kind of confidence that we have seen him speak of these last weeks, if you want to live a life with the kind of hope that he says we can live with, then I think today he will continue to give us some practical, handles, if you will, to hold on to those very things. In the 11th chapter of the book of Hebrews, we find a passage that is often referred to as the faith hall of fame. Is that not right? I mean, these are, in the midst of these chapters over this week and next week, we will catch a glimpse of some of the great men and women of our faith, those who stood up under pressure, those who stood up under difficulty. And we'll be reminded that, well, in the most difficult of circumstances, the most challenging of times, it is this thing that we call faith that will help us live with the confidence and hope that will pull us back from the edge. And I don't know, the longer I live, the more I wonder at those, who walk through life without that kind of hope, without that kind of confidence. And I wonder, how do they survive? How do they survive, the challenges that our life, oftentimes brings to us without that confidence and hope that's found in Jesus Christ? And so after challenging us last week to walk by faith, at the end of chapter 10, our author tries to help us understand just what this thing is that we call faith and what it looks like. And here's what he says in the first few verses of chapter 11. He says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of the things not seen. For by it the elders obtained a good testimony. By faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which are visible." So first of all, let me just say this. When he refers to those who are, the elders obtained a good testimony, he's thinking all the way back to his opening chapter, where he talks about those who had gone before. He's talking about those who had left this heritage of faith. That's who he's speaking of. And so, as we consider this idea of faith, like so many other words, that we oftentimes throw around inside churches, faith sometimes, I think we use it without actually considering what it is. Is that not true? I mean, especially I think in the context of this message that the author of Hebrews has left for us. I mean, faith is at the heart of it, because he tells us that, faith is the substance of things that we hope for. It's the practical outworking of the confidence that he has pointed us towards. This is where it has practical handles that we can hold on to. And so in the heart of our author, in the mind of our author, I don't think it would be a stretch for us to say and for us to understand that faith is the response to who Jesus is and what he has done. I mean, remember, that's the heart of this message. At the very beginning, he starts off by telling us and reminding us of who it is that Jesus is. Who is Jesus? And then he spends some time explaining to us what he has done. And as he gets to the application part of his message, he's saying, now because of this is our response to it. This is how we should respond as a result of who Jesus is and what he has done. And that's why he goes on to say that it is the confidence that we have of the things that aren't seen. You see, it's the truth that we can't see with our eyes, and yet it is the foundation of our faith. It's the foundation of our lives. Faith is believing the things that he has been holding in front of us. Faith is believing who Jesus is. Faith is believing what he has done for us and then acting like it. I mean, that's the problem that we have, don't we? I mean, we love to say, yes, I believe this. Yes, I understand this. But we have trouble putting it into practice. We have trouble actually doing something with this faith that we claim. You see, it's more than believing. It's more than understanding. It is acting. It is living like we believe this. More than that, it's doing so when things are hard. I mean, I guess the better way to say that would be it is especially when things are hard. Faith is not tested on the easy days. It's tested when you are standing on the edge of the cliff. When the whole world feels like it's crumbling around you. When you look out around at the world in which we live and you can't understand it, that is where faith shows itself strong. That is where our confidence shines. That is where this hope that we have in Jesus shows itself in our lives. And so he takes some steps to help us understand just what faith is and what it looks like. And to understand this, he takes us to an interesting place. He takes us all the way back to the very beginning, and he lays a foundation. But this is how this preacher does things, isn't it? I mean, that's what he did when he first started talking about who Jesus is. He goes all the way back, and he says he was here long before anything. He was the one through whom God created all things. He is the one whose word holds all things up. And so he goes all the way back to the beginning of creation. He says, by faith, we understand that God, by his word, created all things. Now, in simple terms, I mean, we could say it like this. We weren't there at creation, right? I mean, some of you are old, but you're not quite that old, right? I mean, we weren't there. I mean, we can't prove, what happened there. And so it is by faith that we accept that God created all things. By faith, we accept the opening words of our Bible that say, in beginning, God. And God was the one that spoke, and the world leapt into existence. You see, it is by this same faith that we understand then all of the implications of that amazing truth. Because it means, if we believe that by faith, then it means that he has authority over all of this creation, does it not? It means that he gets to set the rules, not us. Why? Because he's the one who created it. I mean, we used to sing a song called "This Is My Father's World," right? I mean, it is by faith that we accept it, and it is by faith as we live this out that we demonstrate it. That means, as you mind the depths of this, the implications of this, it means that both us and our stuff are his. If only we believed and lived by that one fundamental step of faith in our lives, everything would change, would it not? If you got up in the morning and you realized that it really is not all about you, if you got up in the morning and you just made the declaration, this is God's world and I will seek to follow him. Everything that I am, everything that I have is his. It would revolutionize our lives. It would take our church and turn it upside down. And we've barely even got started. If you think about it, everything else that we'll talk about then today and even next week, and all of these examples of faith that we will see and we will examine over these next few weeks, it all finds its grounding and its beginning in this truth, that this is God's. But with all of these great truths that we have heard and discovered over the last weeks and months, nothing really speaks clearer than a story. Is that not true? I mean, stories have a way of grabbing a hold of us. Stories have a way of letting us know that these amazing ideas, these amazing truths, they can be lived out in a practical fashion. And so that's what he does. He shows us, over the course of this chapter, he gives us, one snippet after another of how these truths played out in the lives of real people. So let's see what he does here. Let me read just a few more of these verses. He says this, by faith, Abel offered to God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and through it he being dead still speaks. By faith Enoch was taken away so that he did not see death, and was not found because God had taken him. For before he was taken, he had this testimony, that he pleased God. But without faith, it is impossible to please God. But without faith, I already said that. It is impossible to please him. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. By faith, Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. By faith, he goes on in verse 8, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith, he dwelt in the land of promise as in a foreign country, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs of him, with him of the same promise. For he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. By faith, Sarah herself also received strength to conceive seed, and she bore a child when she was past the age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Therefore, from one man, and him as good as dead, were born as many as the stars of the sky in multitude, innumerable as the sand which is by the seashore. They all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, were assured of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For those who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland. And truly, if they called to mind that country from which they had come out, they would have had opportunity to return. But now they desire a better, that is, a heavenly country. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. You know, as I read through this last week and kind of chewed on this a little bit and what God would say to us, I was reminded of a passage that's found in 2 Chronicles 16, where it says this, "For the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth, to show himself strong on behalf of those whose heart is loyal to him." What an amazing picture that is, isn't it? Of God searching the world for those who would catch his eye. Have you ever wondered what kind of life would catch the eye of God Almighty? Have you ever wondered what kind of life would be pleasing to God? Or just, what does God really expect of us? Have you ever wondered that? Have you ever, sat back and just contemplated what could I possibly do with my life that would bring pleasure to the heart of God? You see, our examples this morning would, really, it's all kind of tied together. You see, it is a life of faith, a life that is lived by faith that he seeks. It is a life that is lived that lives out faith. That's what catches the eye of the Lord. And we see this just in the few examples that he gives us. Abel lived like he believed God created all things, didn't he? He lived like he believed all of his stuff was God's. That's really where it boils down to. And the simple reality, this sad reality, is Cain did not. His brother did not. You see, our heritage goes far beyond, far past, I would say, even, the mothers that we celebrate on a day like today. Our heritage goes all the way back to these, these fathers of our faith, all the way back even to Adam and Eve and their son who offered the best of what he had to God, and it was pleasing to him. And then there's this guy named Enoch. Could you think of a better commendation that God could give than to hear those words, and he walked with God? I mean, there's so much in there, so much buried in there. Imagine this, the picture of this. He walked so closely with God that he just kind of walked off into eternity with God. I mean, that's what happened. How did that happen? I have no idea. I just know it did. And after highlighting these two things, I mean, we know he was a preacher because he kind of takes a little road trip down, verse 6. He kind of doesn't really sidetrack himself, but he digs a little bit deeper. And there's no way to overemphasize, to overstate the implications of verse 6. Let me read it again for us. As he says this, but without faith, it is impossible to please him. Now, why does he say this? Well, he talked about Abel who pleased God, right? He talked about Enoch who walked with God. Notice what was said about Enoch. And this was said of him, that he pleased God. And the author assumes that the believers that he is writing to, that they want to know, how do we please God? They want to know, how is it that we live our lives in such a manner that we would catch the eye of God? Well, you remember a few weeks ago, the author told us that, there were three things that we ought to do if we want to keep our confidence, if we want to keep hold of this hope that he gives us. Do you remember what those were? We're to draw near to God. We are to, hold fast, and we are to consider one another. What's interesting to me is what he does here, because here he gives us three things that would guide us to live a faithful life. Three things that would help us, live a life that is filled with and by faith. And what does he say? He says, come to God, believe him, and trust him. I mean, the parallels of those things are amazing, all in their own right. But think about what happened. Think about these examples that that he has set before us, and just simply what it is that they did. Never mind all the detail of each one of these, of their lives, but think about, what does the author tell us? Abel offered to God his best. Enoch walked with God. And now as we go on, we find Noah believed God. I mean, you remember what happened, right? I mean, God came to Noah and said, build an ark. It didn't rain there. What do you need a boat for? And what does Noah do? I mean, if he lived in our day, he'd gather everybody together, he'd have a business meeting, and then he'd probably, talk it to death for a couple weeks. They'd pray about it for 6 months, and then they'd decide, we probably don't need an ark. What does Noah do? He just builds one. He just starts to why does he do this? Because he believed God. Abraham obeyed God. Abraham went when he didn't even know where he was going. What does that say about us today? I mean, we want to know every detail. We want to know how it's all going to work out. We want to know exactly at what point we need to turn where, and all of these things. Abraham, God just said, go. And Abraham went. Abraham trusted God. Abraham persevered. Abraham wasn't granted everything all at once, 2 days after he left. No. In fact, the tail end of that passage that we read said that they didn't even see these promises come to fulfillment. I mean, we could get lost in any one of these accounts, right? We could spend days talking about any one of these lives. But our preacher in Hebrews is not trying to get us to mine all of the intimate details of every one of these accounts. He's trying to get us to see the big picture. Why else would he go, and we'll see this especially next week, in rapid succession. He says, what about this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one? All of these examples and lives of faith. Because if these were the kinds of lives that God is pleased with, if these are the kind of individuals that God took notice of, then what about you and I? what about us? What would our lives look like if we followed these examples? We don't need to know all about Abraham and all of the details. We don't need to even know all about Enoch or even Abel for that matter. What would happen if we simply followed their example? But I know what happens. I know what happens. I know what we do. We have the tendency to take people like this, do we not? And we put them up on a pedestal. We put them in a category all alone. Like they were, something special, some kind of super spiritual people, and we put them up there. Do you know why we do this? Because it gives us then an excuse not to live the same way. You see, if there was something about Abraham that was so special that no one else could ever achieve, well, it gives us an excuse to not achieve it as well. But here's the interesting thing. If you've been paying attention at all throughout this message of Hebrews, this letter that he left behind, this message that he wrote intending to encourage this group of believers, then you would realize that we actually are the ones who are better off than they are. Because they did not have the benefit of living on this side of Easter. They did not have the benefit of living on this side of the empty tomb. And so the author tells us that they died without ever seeing the implementation of the new covenant. They died before they ever saw Jeremiah's words come to fruition. They died without ever having tasted the ongoing indwelling presence of the living God with His Spirit inside of every believer. They didn't have that. And yet, they walked by faith. I mean, we know very little about Abel. Just a few verses. And we know even less about Enoch. Abraham we know quite a bit about, right? I mean, there's a lot of detail that we're given. And one of the things that stands out to me, one of the things that grabs a hold of me every time I look at these super, faith giants such as Abraham, is that he was every bit as much a sinner as you and I. These were, by all accounts, regular people. They struggled with the same things. And yet, in the midst of it, they walked by faith. They walked by faith. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's the challenge that we have in our world today, because we don't like to walk anywhere, do we? I mean, isn't that true? I mean, when I can get away with it, at the end of a service, I get somebody else to go get my car. We live in a world that's fast, don't we? We want everything now. We want faster computers, faster phones. We want fast food. We want instant gratification. We want instant information. People today, we want everything and we want it now. I mean, you see this even in our little people, don't we? We want to be rich, wealthy, but we do not want to put in the years of work that it takes. We want to be the best, but we don't want to practice. We want to teach, but we first do not want to learn. And we want to have great relationships, but we don't want to put in the effort and the time necessary to make them great. We're an impatient people, are we not? And nothing reveals this more, I think, than how we conduct ourselves within the walls of our churches. And even in our spiritual lives. We want results, but we are unwilling to pay the price. We want a dynamic relationship with God. Is that not true? Couldn't we say that? Most people, I would say, that walk in the doors of a church would say, I want to have a dynamic relationship with God, but I don't want to take the time to get to know Him. Do we say that? Of course not. I mean, we usually have some spiritual words we can use to, kind of hide, our real motives. We want successful ministries in our churches, don't we? Never mind churches. We want this church to be successful, don't we? We want to see our ministries thrive. But we don't want to take the time to prepare. We don't want to take the time to pray. Didn't we talk about this a few weeks ago? A few months ago? What would happen? What would happen if all we did is if every single one of us took 2 minutes before we walked in these doors on a Sunday morning and just said, God, do something amazing in our midst this morning. Do something in my life this morning. We would not have enough chairs in this place. And that's all it would take. But we don't like to walk. We don't like to walk anywhere. We want the power and strength that we read about in our Bibles. But we don't first want God, we first don't want to let Him change our character. Right? We want it all. And we want it now. We want drive-through Christianity. Right? Could you imagine you pulling up to the drive-through window, right? We want drive-through, but we want it to taste like Thanksgiving dinner, right? And so can you imagine, this is kind of what I think it would sound like. We pull up to the drive-through window and we say, I will take salvation, but you can hold the lordship of Christ. You just keep that on the side. I'll take a side order of church and leave commitment in the bag because we don't need any of that. But I do want a supersized, do they still call it that? I don't know. A supersized cup of joy. But give me the worship separately because it might take too long. And, I just want to add what suits me and what I'm comfortable with. But I would really like for you to package it all up in to-go containers because I want to consume it whenever and wherever I would like. Oh, I don't want it to cost me anything either. And can you hurry up? Because my favorite TV show is just about to come on and I don't want to miss it. I mean, that's ludicrous, isn't it? But yet, isn't there like a ring of truth in that? In how we conduct ourselves? If we had time this morning, we could just spend, we'd feel really guilty by the time we left here. But we want it all, and we want it all now. But like, fast food, we fool ourselves into thinking that fast faith does anything except fool us into thinking that we have gained some nourishment. You see, we fool ourselves into believing that fast and easy faith will give us the power and strength that we want. And we hope that it will fool everybody else around us too. And that's really what we're aiming for, isn't it? We want everyone else to think that we are super spiritual, that we are godly people. Now, I'm not a nutritionist, but I'm pretty sure that fast food doesn't do a whole lot for the body. It just doesn't. And you don't have to be a theologian to realize that fast faith does not stand up under pressure. We wonder, why do people fall away? Why do we struggle so much? It's because we don't like to walk. You see, that kind of faith will not pull you back from the edge of a cliff. That kind of faith does not bring the power and strength like those that we read about in this great chapter and in so many of chapters like it in our Bibles. But it begs the question, doesn't it? How do we get there? How do we get the kind of faith that these examples stand out and show us? How do we get to a point where we would catch God's eye? How would we get to a point where our lives please Him? How can we stand strong in the midst of life's challenges? How can we live godly lives in a lost world? How do we go how do we go beyond just reading about this stuff to living it out in our everyday lives? How do we leave behind a heritage of faith? That's what these did. That's what God is looking for. That's His desire. I mean, do you think it would be important for us to understand how could we do that? Maybe more important even than that. Than even asking the question of whether you are standing at the edge of a cliff today is this question. What will our children do? What will they learn from us when they find themselves standing at the edge of a cliff? Because I don't know about you, but I believe that our kids and our grandkids will face far more cliffs than we ever have. Our world is full of them. And they will learn from us. The last couple of weeks, we've had a little person living in our house that's like a little tape recorder. And he follows us around no matter where. And he repeats every gesture. He repeats every statement. He repeats everything. And so I want to leave us with this today. Whether you are a mother or not, what kind of heritage are you leaving behind? You notice I didn't ask whether you will leave a heritage, because we all will. Even if you're not a mother. Even if you don't have little people living in your house. Because we all have those who look to us. We all have those who are watching us. There are dozens of these little critters walking around our church that look at all of us every single Sunday. That's scary, isn't it? And they will copy what we do. So typically, in a message like this, we would ask the question something like this, do you believe God, like Noah did? Do you walk with God as Enoch did? Do you listen to God as Abraham did? When God taps you on the shoulder and says, I've got something for you to do you go and do it? Do you trust Him? But instead, let me ask it a little bit differently. Do you want your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, or those who are just watching you, do you want them to grow up believing God? Then show them that you do. Show them that you believe God. Do you want your children and your grandchildren, those who are watching you, do you want them to walk with God? What better heritage could we leave behind than to know that our children pleased God? Why? Because they walked with God. Then let them see you walk with Him. You see, they don't need, in fact, I would go so far as to say they don't care what you tell them. They will copy what you do. Is that not true? How many times, I may have said once or twice, don't do as I do as I say, right? That really doesn't work very good. Because they copy us. They follow exactly what we do. Do you want your children and your grandchildren, those who are watching you, do you want them to learn to grow up listening to God? To be even known, as Abraham was, as a friend of God? Let them see you trust God. Let them see you listen to God. Do you want your children and your grandchildren to just, when God taps them on the shoulder and says, I've got something for you to do, do you want them to go? Then they need to see it in our lives. They need to see it in us. I mean, on and on we could go. If we want them to learn to trust God, we need to trust God. And I tell you, fast food faith doesn't cut it when you're standing at the edge of a cliff and you have no idea what's next. And our kids, our grandkids, those who are watching us, they can smell a fraud a mile away. The younger generations are better at it than we ever were. They don't care what we say. They want to see what we do. And you see, all of this stuff that we've been learning about who Jesus is, about what he has done, it'd be staggering to know how many collective years in church there is sitting in this room. But how much information do we have that we have never lived like it was real? That makes sense? If Jesus really is who he says he is, if he has really done what the author of Hebrews has laid before us, if he really has died for your sin, if he really has offered us the kind of hope, kind of confidence that the author of Hebrews has laid in front of us, then why don't we live like it? Because that has the power to change the future. And that's the kind of heritage that not only would please God, but would change those who are coming after us. And I can think of no better goal for our lives than to leave that kind of legacy, that kind of heritage behind. And it does not just fall on the shoulders of our mothers, but on every single one of us. So what will you do with some of what we've seen? What will you do with what we've learned, what we've heard? What will you do with who Jesus is and what he's done for you? Stand with me, will you? Father, we are grateful that you've left behind for us these amazing examples